All right. Welcome, everyone, to Cultivating, Learning, Slow Looking, and Mindfulness Practices with Art. We are so excited to be here with all of you today to share in this interactive session techniques to use slow looking, simple movements, and mindfulness techniques to engage students with art. My name is Tess Porter, and I'm a digital content producer and educator at the Smithsonian Office of Educational Technology. We're a central office here at the Smithsonian who have the wonderful opportunity to work with educators across the Smithsonian and support digital access for learning. I am thrilled to be joined by two wonderful educators today from the National Museum of Asian Art. Their names are BoBeen Chung, Engagement and Visitor Experience, and Jennifer Reifsteck, an education specialist in K through 12 learning. They are the experts here today. They're going to share the techniques that they've been using with learners in looking at art from their museum. They've used these techniques over and over, and they're going to share not only how to use these techniques, but how it's gone with their learners as well. So I am thrilled to be able to have the two of them here with us today. Um, a lot of what we're going to talk about today will involve the Smithsonian Learning Lab, both as a place to find resources that we're sharing and materials that Jen and BoBeen have put together for us so you can adapt and use what we talk about today with your own learners in whatever context that takes place. I won't go too much in detail into what the Learning Lab is today, but upfront, I want you to know that it is a free online platform designed for teachers and students, where you can discover digital museum resources from across the Smithsonian, create interactive learning experiences with them, and share your discoveries and creations with others. You don't need an account to use the site and find everything that it has to offer. But if you do create a free account, that's when you can start creating what we call collections, which are aggregations of resources for learning, similar to what Jen and BoBeen have built to support today's session. If you'd like to learn more about the Learning Lab and how to get started in discovering resources and creating collections, I have a couple of resources that will help. The first is our Help Center, and you can see the URL for this in the bottom right of the screen. Our Help Center has a Getting Started in the Learning Lab guide that will walk you through with simple instructions and screenshots everything you know to get started: how to search for resources, how to create collections of your own, how to share the cool things you find and create with others. It's also a place where you can find archived and upcoming webinars that dive into not only things like we're going to talk about today, techniques to use digital museum resources for learning, but also step-by-step tutorials on how to get started and using the Learning Lab on the technical side. So again, that's our Help Center. It's located at learninglab.si.edu/help, that URL on the bottom right of the screen. Now, I mentioned that this is not the only webinar we hold. This one in particular, Cultivating Learning, is part of the Cultivating Learning series where we focus on techniques to use digital museum resources for learning. We host a variety of other webinars as well, including Getting Started, which walks through the basics, and Creating Collections, which goes into that second piece if you're interested in creating collections of your own. Here's our upcoming schedule. Our next session is going to be on April 4th. We've got another one on April 14th and on April 25th. I'll talk more about these at the end of our session as we look towards the future. But for now, I just want you to know that the schedule for this is found at the Help Center as well, alongside all of those archived videos. This session will be archived after it airs. So if you need to step away early, but want to catch up on what we're talking about later, if you want to share this session with a colleague or a friend afterward, it will be available after it airs at the same link you're watching it at now. So please feel free to come back and watch the entire session later. This session is also going to be interactive. We really want to hear from you throughout today's session. We want to hear ideas that about what we're sharing and how you think it might work in the learning environments that you're working in. Any questions you have if something doesn't make sense, or you'd like BoBeen and Jen's advice on how to adapt these techniques to a certain learning environment, you can send your ideas and questions anytime using one of two methods, depending on the platform you're joining us on today. If you're joining us on YouTube, you can use the chat, which you'll find to the right of the video on YouTube. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can use the comment box, which you'll see below the video. And to get us started today, if you haven't already, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. We would love to know a little bit about who is joining us in the room today, who you are, where you are. If you're a teacher, we would love to know what you teach, whether it's age level or subject area. And we'll do our best to make sure that we tailor this session or incorporate some ideas on how to use the techniques we're sharing in your environment. So please feel free to get warmed up and using the chat to introduce yourself. So I think that covers it for my introduction. Jen and BoBeen, I would love to turn this over to you. I know that you also have a question to get us started off with today.
Yes, and thank you so much, Tess, for the invitation to present today. I'm a big fan of these webinars, so here I get to be a presenter for one, so thanks so much. So today we're talking about slow looking and mindfulness. So our opening question we'd like you all to ask and think about is, what words, what phrases, what images come to mind when you hear the word mindfulness? And go ahead and share out in the chat.
Take your time with this too. I apologize for the siren in the background. It is perhaps not the best audio to conjure mindfulness, but perhaps mindfulness and the persistence of distraction is a good prompt too. But I know something that comes to mind immediately for me when I think of mindfulness is it comes to mind as an image for me. It's like a very calm space, a lot of blue. I think just a way of paying attention to everything that's going on around me. I see Sarah in the chat. Sarah says, I think of tuning in my senses.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you to all of you too who are introducing yourself in the chat. It is so great to see the variety of folks that we have joining us in the room today. I think this is going to be a great discussion. I see Lori also says that they think of meditation, long practice, contemplation, and quiet.
Yeah. And it's so interesting, Tess, when we started out, you heard the sirens in the background, because even sound, can be an anchor and tune us back into the present moment, right? So even something as harsh as hearing police sirens can remind us of where we are at right now in the present moment. So
yes, absolutely. I see someone else in the chat. Julian says active spirituality. That's how I see it. Jenna, would love to know what words, phrases, or images come to mind for you when you think of mindfulness.
I think of sensations like warmth and peace and stillness. Warmth because when I practice mindfulness meditation, I feel a sense of warmth. Like I notice the temperature of my nose when I breathe in and breathe out, so the cool and the warmth. I notice like the warmth in my belly and my heart, and in the sense of stillness and sense of calm as well.
I see some of those sensory reflections in Jessica's comment that they just shared in the chat. Sensory fingerprints, stomach.
Yeah, the body is such an anchor to the present moment.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So shall we dive in, Jen?
Yeah, I think so. We
And
can.
please, audience, please feel free to keep sharing the words, phrases, and images that come to mind for you and introducing yourself in the chat as we move ahead.
So we're going to start out with an experiential exercise. So in the next slide, I will invite you to let your eyes wander all around the image, all around the information, and see what you can take in, see what you notice. And now going to the next slide, we invite you to share out. What did you remember from that first slide? What did you see or notice, or what did you learn?
Yes, please feel free to share your observations in the chat. Again, what do you remember from the image that we just took a look at? All right, Becky says the smooth waves. I'll say while we wait for more to come in that I remember a mountain and maybe a branch. Lori says repeating shapes of the road, muted colors. Jessica says solo figure, almost part of the bearish branches. Sarah says the mountain looked like it was smoking. The perspective of the boy balanced on the branch, taking in the whole scene. Jessica also says, it's hard. I was so sucked in by the words on the screen.
Yeah. So Jessica's remembering the words, and some folks are remembering like a landscape. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Any other things that you see or notice and that you remembered seeing or noticing? Or perhaps that's it.
So this time, let's try a different approach to looking at that work of art. So I want to invite you now to take a comfortable seat or a comfortable standing position. And you may need to stretch in order to get there. Do what you need to do to feel comfortable. And you can get your feet firmly planted on the floor if that's comfortable for you, or you can sit in a cross-legged position, or you can stand with your feet firmly rooted on the floor, whatever's comfortable for you. And just take a moment to just look around and notice your surroundings. Notice your space right now. Take in the colors, the shapes, the lines, the textures. Look up, look down, look behind you. And now I invite you to close your eyes or gaze downward, soften your focus, or stare down at the floor. And make any last movements you need to make before you get comfortable. Maybe you need to roll those shoulders up, back, and down to make a nice tall spine. Give some space between your heart and your belly. And you're welcome to keep your hands on your lap, or you can put your hands on your body in a soothing hold. So you can put your hand on your chest, or on your belly, or on your eyes. Do whatever feels right, whatever feels good for you in this moment. And as you start to tune in with your eyes closed or in soft focus, bring all your awareness to your soft belly breathing. Breathing in through your nose, filling your belly up like a balloon. And when you exhale, let your belly soften towards your spine without any contraction or pushing or effort. Let your breath be smooth and soft and continuous. And now bring your attention to your breathing in your nose. Notice the temperature of your nose on the inhale, and notice the temperature of your nose on the exhale. And tune in and notice how your body feels. Notice where you feel the breath the most. Maybe you feel the breath the most in your belly. Maybe you feel it the most in your chest, or maybe in your nose or on your top lift. Just tune in and notice. And transitioning out of this mindful moment, you can softly flutter your eyes open. You can give yourself a full body stretch here. You can sigh it out through your mouth. And we'll transition back to our image. And this time, we're going to take a full minute to look at this image. And we have some special tools for you to really zoom on in and get a closer look, a slower look at this work of art. So in the chat, you're welcome to bring up the Learning Lab site for this object. And you can see that there's various views of the image, and you can use the zoom in and the zoom out tool to notice all the details. So go ahead and take some more time to look slowly and look closely at this work of art.
While we take this time, I'm also going to, on the screen here, screen share for those of you who are not able to open that artwork on your own in another tab. And I'll do some zooming and navigating around for you.
Nice. Great. Thank you so much, Tess. Now I'd like to go back to our question and what we were noticing about this image and what our experience was like this time with the second look.
Please put your observations and experiences in the chat. To get us started off with, those folks think of and enter their answers. I know something that stood out for me is I felt like I had a lot of mental space and curiosity and time to look at the details. I got really interested in the way that the artist created texture in this.
Yeah.
I think Lori just shared in the chat the basket hanging from the tree. I hadn't seen it before. Lori, I had the same experience. I had completely missed it on the first look. I think something that struck me too was the texture on that basket as well.
Yeah.
Lori also says the delicacy of the leaves on the hanging branches and that the boy might be playing the flute. Sarah shares, I felt more like I was inside of the image. When I saw the boy was playing a flute, I thought about moments out in nature by myself when I have made music, singing, etc.
Interesting.
So a greater space to connect with the image on maybe a personal level.
Right.
Carla shares, I was looking for small details too. The dots in the tree and the delicate snow.
Interesting. So noticing more of the textures, more of the details. Yeah, for me, I really got a sense of the painting on silk because you could really see when you use the zoom in tool, you can really see the texture of the surface of the painting itself. And that really stood out for me too, is that these little details.
For me too, the structure of the piece. I had not pictured it being a hanging scroll until I had looked at the second image and then started to see that in the first. I see Sarah also shares in the chat, I saw small blue dots on the bottom of the image and wondered if they were meant to be spray from the river or if they were just accidental aging or damage. That's great, Sarah. That makes me want to go back and take another look.
Yeah, me too. And what I'm noticing too is we're getting more detailed with our observations this time around too, versus the first look, that really quick look that we had.
Absolutely. I mean, there was more time to look, but also I felt like I was in a mental space to do that. Jessica shares in awe of the simple use of shade to form the mountain. Yes, that's another thing that makes me want to go back and take a second look.
Yeah.
What I love about any activity like this where we share our observations in a group, people always notice things that I don't.
Yes.
And I gain so much more from that. Jessica says too, noticing the foiled patterns in the fabric along the top and bottom edges.
Yeah. This was wonderful, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing your observations. So what we just recreated for you was a little experiment here. So our first experience, we had the image, but also the wall label, the text for the image, to recreate what our typical mind is like when looking at works of art in a museum. So there's been several timing and tracking studies done where the research shows that folks are spending an average of 15 to 30 seconds in front of a work of art, and the good portion of the time is spent reading the label. So we got a sense of our typical museum visit when we're in front of a work of art with that first look. And then with that second look, we experienced mindfulness and we experienced slow looking. So let's take a look at those definitions here. So what do we mean by slow looking? So there's many definitions out there, but my go-to comes from Shari Tishman. She's a principal researcher at Harvard Project Zero, and she wrote the book on slow looking, the art and practice of learning through observation. And she defines slow looking as taking the time to carefully observe more than meets the eye at first glance. And based on feedback we were getting from the chat, people were sharing that they were noticing things that they didn't see at first glance. So we did slow looking in action today. So taking a step back here, we talked about fast minds at the museum, and we talked about slow looking. So let's unpack that a bit. What do we mean by a slow mind? What do we mean by a fast mind? So first and foremost, one mind isn't better than the other. We need both minds, both fast and slow, to operate in our daily lives. But to illustrate an example of what a fast mind and a slow mind looks like, I'll give you an example of a fast mind and a slow mind at a stoplight, right? So the fast mind knows that green means go and red means stop. And it knows it's true and it trusts it and it does it. It just becomes automatic. A slow mind, however, at a stop might look something like this. I wonder who invented the stoplight, and who decided on red and yellow and green, and why in that order. And I thought that yellow meant slow down, but people just seem to go fast during the yellow light. And whoever invented the stoplight, why didn't they think about people who were colorblind? And then meanwhile, the fast minds at the stoplight are blaring their horns at the slow mind to go through the light. So as you can see, we need fast minds in certain situations. We need slow minds in certain situations. So we need the fast mind to keep us safe, to get us out the door in the morning, but we need the slow mind to make friends, to solve the world's problems, to uncover our biases, to uncover our prejudice. So we need both minds to operate in the world. So going on to the next slide here. So looking at slow looking, and what are the benefits of this practice? And I really love this quote by Shari Tishman, again, the author of Slow Looking. Slow looking is a rewarding feedback loop. The more you look, the more you see. The more you see, the more engaged you become. And we definitely witnessed that in our practice today, where we were sharing our observations of what we were seeing, and we were like, you saw that. I want to go back to the work of art and then look again. So it's this rewarding feedback loop where you want to keep learning more. You keep growing your sense of curiosity. And we also noticed today that, this practice, it can really train your mind for making observations, making inferences for these skills and deliberation. And when you practice slow looking with your learners and they make these observations, And you can always ask them, well, what do you see that makes you say that, right? This reasoning with evidence that comes with the practice of slow looking. You considered the perspectives of others. We had one participant felt like they, were in the work of art. They jumped inside and they could, visualize themselves in that scene. So here you're stepping inside the work of art. You're visualizing, yourself in the art. When you share your observations with other learners, you're understanding other people's perspectives and you're learning about their interpretations of the work of art. And again, that's that rewarding feedback loop. And in this, the slow looking, like I said before, it encourages curiosity. It really increases your descriptive skills in how you communicate about what you see, how you describe what you see. So these are just a few examples of the benefits of the practice. And again, some more here. These are tying more into the social and emotional learning skills that slow looking provokes in the classroom. When you're sharing slow looking conversations with others and you're honoring what students are saying and their interpretations about the work of art, you are promoting, self-efficacy, you're promoting student agency, which is going back to social and emotional learning skills. You're taking on other people's perspectives, understanding their points of view when they interpret the work of art. You become, you enter the work of art and you use your imagination. And so this is all related to social awareness and perspective taking. And here are some strategies for slow looking at art. We love Project Zero at the National Museum of Asian Art, and I selected a couple examples here that if you're new to Project Zero, these are great to get you up and started. And the great thing about Project Zero thinking routines is that they scaffold the learning, they scaffold the looking in the questions. And they can be used in combination with each other. So for example, you can use a see, think, wonder, and then build on another routine like step inside, or you can use a routine like looking 10 times 2, where you invite learners to look at an object, write down 10 words or phrases that they see, do a second look, and then write 2 new words or phrases that they see. So that's a great one to build observation skills. And then you can follow up with more imaginative thinking routines, such as step inside. And so we take our boy viewing Mount Fuji, and we demo here what a step inside routine might look like with boy viewing Mount Fuji. So step inside invites you to take on the perspective of a person or even an object in the work of art. So your learners could decide that they want to be the person looking at the mountain. They could be the mountain themselves or the willow tree, what have you. Or they could even step inside and imagine that they're walking around in the landscape. So there's a lot of flexibility here. So with this routine, we are imagining that you're the child. It says boy, but who, it can be whatever gender here. That you are the figure pictured on the tree here. And through their eyes, you write down, what you see. And then through their ears, what they hear. And then through, you break down the senses here to explore? What might the person be thinking as they look out into the scene as they play the flute? So you can see that step inside builds this perspective taking. It allows for creative imagination as well. Yeah, what they feel, and feeling too, what they feel on their skin, or what they feel in their heart, their emotions as well. So it's a really highly adaptable routine. So thinking about slow looking and mindfulness, and thinking about how these two practices overlap. So starting off first with a definition, what is mindfulness? And there's many definitions out there, but I go to John Kabat-Zinn, who's was a medical researcher, widely accredited for mainstreaming mindfulness meditation practices to address, chronic pain. And he defines mindfulness as mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally. So there in the definition, right there, you tap into slow looking, where slow looking is all about awareness. It's all about paying attention. It's a purposeful practice. And again, both mindfulness practices and slow looking take time. These are learned practices. Our default mode is to be a fast mind, to have these automatic responses. So it takes time to learn mindfulness practices. It takes time to learn how to look slowly. And it's something that can be taught and something that can be learned. Both welcome a sense of curiosity to notice with fresh eyes. Both require focus and concentration. And it's always this process of unfolding that, every mindfulness practice, every time you look at a work of art, you're going to notice something different. It's always this process of unfolding, of being in the present moment. Now, thinking about mindfulness strategies in the classroom, like Tess was saying earlier, we did create a learning lab collection where we take the information from the slides we're sharing with you today. But we have several 2-minute clips of all the practices that you see here on the screen. And thinking about how to incorporate mindful movement in your classroom, a great place to start is always start with the energy level of your students and decide where you want to move that energy to get the students ready to learn. So if your class is high energy, they just came from their specials and that transition, and now they have to do English language arts and the energy level is high, it's going to be difficult for them to, just like we did, to close our eyes and pay attention to our breathing, right? So in that instance, it would be great to start with these activation poses, these activation movements, starting because their energy is this high level. So start with them activated and then move that energy down to calming, and then we're moving it down to focus. And then meanwhile, if you have a class that is lethargic, they're just like, I'm just not motivated to do this work. You can start with them in the calming postures and move them to the activation postures and movements. and then move into focus. So you can see you always want to start with the energy level with your students, move it to the place you want to get them ready to learn and focused. And like I said, all these practices that you see here on the screen, I have about like 2-minute clips of each practice, so you can see it demonstrated, and there's also written directions on how to set it up with your learners. And all of this can be found in our Learning Lab collection for today's workshop. We've designed the Learning Lab into various sections. So we start out with, just like we did today, definitions of slow looking and mindfulness, and some information about the benefits of the practices. And then we go into different sections of the types of movement practices, the type of mindful meditation practices that you can use with your learners, whether you want to activate, whether you want to calm, or whether you want to focus. And we've also included the Project Zero thinking routines I mentioned today that could be useful for starting a slow looking practice with your learners. We've also included the Boy Viewing Mount Fuji work of art, and then information about the slow looking book by Shari Tishman from the Project Zero's website. And, this was just a quick snippet of slow looking and mindfulness practices with your students. If you'd like a deeper dive, we partnered with the mindfulness education nonprofit Create Calm, who provide yoga and mindfulness instruction to classrooms. To provide this virtual field trip that we call Artful Movement. So we invite you, if you want to see this practice in action with your students, what we do is we combine meditation with slow looking at art and mindful movement inspired by yoga to recreate the work of art with movement practice. So you're welcome to sign up for an Artful Movement virtual field trip. We also have a lesson plan on slow looking and hokusai that gives you tips on setting up a mindfulness practice, meditation before looking at a work of hokusai, and an accompanying worksheet for you for students to record their learning. So we invite you to take a look at that resource as well. And we like to pause, and we request that you give us some feedback on today's session. So in the chat, we've placed a survey link, and we ask that you please click on that link and keep that tab in your browser and complete that link, and we can give you some time to do that right now.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jen. This was really fantastic. I would love to move this into a Q&A. I would love to give everyone a chance to ask you and BoBeen some questions about what you've prepared here. But let's take a moment to just look at the survey. And while you do that, I saw in the chat that one of the links that I shared doesn't seem to be working. So while we take those couple minutes to get started on the survey, I'm going to investigate that for a moment. So
thanks for the
more
heads
in a
up.
moment, of course. All right. So if you finished the survey, wonderful. If you haven't yet, that's okay. I would love to bring us back together for an open Q&A. We have Jen and also BoBeen here, and they are wonderful resources. So any questions you have, we would love to hear them. Let me switch up a few things here so you can see all of us, and I'll bring back BoBeen when she's ready to come back on screen. But first, Jen, really wanted to thank you. I thought this was really wonderful. BoBeen, you too. I really appreciated how we took a step back from going through that routine together and looking at ways not only you know, the science of how it makes us think differently or helps us to think differently, but what that looks like and the values in different environments. Um, and then those thinking routines you shared to support building those out into a larger activity. I saw so many connections to things that people shared in the chat earlier, whether it was observations. It was one of our participants who shared that doing that second slow look helped them feel like they were in the artwork and made some personal connections for them. All right, what if I was in this place? When have I been in nature? When have I, appreciated nature like this with music, with art? And then two, I saw someone in the chat as an arts educator who focuses on writing recently a lot of poetry. And I was thinking about the step inside our routine too for that, where not only is that a wonderful, it feels like such a wonderful opportunity for conversation, but how many creative works could that feed into? Whether it's a fiction or nonfiction writing piece, or a poetry writing piece. It could even be creating an artwork. I mean, I feel like the possibilities are endless, but just those questions give it so much structure to move forward into students either continuing the conversation or creating something. So I really appreciate that.
Yeah,
Uh,
I think that's
how,
the beauty
yeah,
of the Project Zero thinking routines. They're so simple. And then, from these conversations, you get so much imagination, so much creativity that could definitely feed into other projects. And we did focus on the arts today because that's just that's our museum. But think about you can look slowly at anything, a math problem, um, you know a plant. It's just there's so much applications beyond the arts.
absolutely. And it's a life skill too,
It's a life skill.
you know.
Yes.
Yeah. It's something that, some of what we did in the beginning reminds me of my yoga classes, or when I practice yoga. When I enter into doing that, the first step is always to slow down, get
Mhm.
in touch with my body and where I am with space, and then I'm able to enter into yoga with, you know, a lot more power and mindfulness. But I, personally try reflect that into just all parts of my life. And I can imagine that this would be a great skill for students to learn too in the classroom.
Absolutely.
So I'm really excited while we wait for questions to come in. And audience, I apologize again for the sirens. I live in a city, but if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. Um, Jen and BoBeen are, have a lot of experience with education outside of this too. So if there's anything you're puzzling through, or if you're curious about more resources from the National Museum of Asian Art, they are the people to ask. Um, but I wanted to share or say again that I'm excited about the workshops that you have coming up. Do you happen to know when the next one is taking place?
Yeah. So as I mentioned in our presentation, um, you know, we have experiences for students too. So think about booking a virtual field trip and experiencing mindful movement and slow looking at art. If you want to see these practices demonstrated with your students, we have our virtual field trip Artful Movement. But we're partnering with International Slow Art Day, which is April 2nd, to bring slow and flow. So just like today, we're going to be mindfully looking at a work of art. It's actually a work of art on display right now in our museum with our Mind Over Matter exhibition. So we're going to be looking at a painting and, with Project Zero thinking routines. So you'll get to experience that participatory practice of slow looking with a Project Zero thinking routine. But then you'll get to engage in some mindful movement inspired by that work of art as well. So, details to register for that are in the chat on our website, and we'd love to see you there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And BoBeen too, I'll let you share that final slide and let me hide this question banner, though that does not mean questions will no longer be taken. If you have a question, please share it. But I know that you wanted to share how they can keep in touch with you as well moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you sign up for our social media, you'll get updated on upcoming teacher professional development, teacher resources. You can feel free to drop us an email if you think of a question after today's session or just want to connect. Feel free to email us at asiateachers@si.edu.
Wonderful. I should say too, we've been sharing a lot of links in the chat today. We've made all of those available in the description of the video, and they will stay there after the session completes airing. So if you want to refer back to anything that we shared in the chat today, I think there may also be a few additional resources there, but regardless, they are all there in the chat for you. Please refer to those. And again, those also include that really great Learning Lab collection that Jen and BoBeen built. They really tie everything that we looked at today together. So you'll find the artwork that we looked at, the questions that we used, the Project Zero thinking routines that would be wonderful extensions for slow looking, and then those physical practices that can help bring mindfulness into your classroom and work with the energy level of the classroom to bring it to a place you want it to be in. That's something else I wanted to say I really appreciated too. So thank you.
Yeah, because I think, when we think of mindfulness, we often think calm and quiet, but not all mindfulness practices are calm and quiet. There's a lot of activation poses, a lot of activation movements. It all comes down to moving the energy, and you got to start with where you're at to get to where you want to go, to get to that calm. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I like about the activation too is sometimes students speaking for myself, sometimes I need a little bit of preparation to step into that. I need a little bit of an energy boost to get there.
Yes.
So I really appreciate those. Well, it looks like we're getting close to the end of the session. If there are any final questions for those of you joining us today, please don't hesitate to put them in the chat. It's not too late. But as we wrap up, Jen and BoBeen, I just wanted to check back in with you. Are there any final thoughts that you wanted to share before we begin wrapping up?
I just want to thank you so much for this invitation. I want to thank all of our participants out there enjoying this session. And like I said, feel free to be in touch. Feel free to check out our virtual field trips. And we have the Slow and Flow teacher workshop virtually on April 2nd.
Yes, absolutely take advantage of that. And don't hesitate to reach out to Jen and BoBeen. I've known them for a long time. They are really wonderful and supportive, and I know they truly want to help. So please reach out to them. The last thing I wanted to share as we wrap up today is first a reminder that today's session is going to be archived. So as soon as it finishes airing in a couple minutes, you'll have access to the archive to watch it again if you had to pop in late, want to check back on something that you needed more detail on, if you wanted to share it with a colleague. That archive will also be made available on our Help Center, which I mentioned at the beginning of today's session. It's a place where you can find more information about the Learning Lab, which is the platform that we shared some of the resources on today. It's also where you can find a slew of archived and upcoming sessions focusing on using digital museum resources for learning. I've got our schedule of our next upcoming sessions here. We've got another one in this Cultivating Learning series that focuses on techniques to use digital museum resources for learning. And that is going to be focusing on exploring identity through playful art making. And we're very lucky to have two great educators from the Hirshhorn Museum and Sculpture Garden joining us for that session. That's going to begin April 4th. Then we're going to have a getting started session, which will introduce you to using the Learning Lab on Thursday, April 14th, and a creating collection session on Monday, April 25th, which will dive into how to create collections like the one Jen and BoBeen created on the lab to use with your students. Um, Finally, I just wanted to thank you all again for the conversation today. I loved seeing all of your thoughts here in the chat, and I really hope today's session today was helpful for you. So thank you for taking the time to join us and share your thoughts and ideas with us. So I think that's it for today. It has been so great being here with you, and I'll see you again soon. Bye, everyone.